For the first mobilization, we're going to use a lacrosse ball. We're going to put it underneath the hamstring. We're going to do this on something that's pretty solid that we can sit on here. I want to straddle it a little bit, and I'm going to roll around and lean some of my weight into that leg and find a tender spot somewhere in the meat of that hamstring muscle. Once I get there, I can sit my weight onto it, and we're just going to extend the knee and bend back and forth, doing repetitions. Okay, we can do 10, 15, 20 of these. Once you feel like that spot's starting to loosen up a little bit, we can do some oscillations side to side, sort of just shaking the ball on and off of that tender spot. And then we're going to move it around and we're going to find another spot, lean our weight into it, and same thing. Extend and bend the knee for repetitions, and then we'll do oscillations side to side. The next exercise we're going to do is going to target a muscle called the posterior tibialis, which sits right behind our tibia bone, which is going to be our shin bone. So we have to go to the inside of the leg for this. This muscle runs down and it attaches into our plantar fascia, and it helps keep our plantar fascia lifted up off the ground. So when we talk about arch support, most of that comes from this muscle. It also gets very tight from impact types of activities, especially running. So we're going to use our lacrosse ball. We're going to lay that leg on the ground, and I'm going to get the ball not on the shin bone, but right behind it. And we're going to build some pressure up here. I can actually use both my hands and lean into it. And we're going to start to roll that ball down the back side of the tibia in that soft tissue. And we're going to look for tender spots. So for me, I find a tender spot right about here. I can hold pressure. I can do small little circles. I can even take the ball, push it into that tender spot, and I can twist one direction and hold it. And I can twist the other direction. Okay, we're gonna work our way down the leg. We're gonna start about mid-calf, work all the way down till we get just behind that ankle bone, and try to hit any tender spots along the length of that. Deep pressure, 30 to 60 seconds, and try to move the ball around and really get that muscle gliding as you do this. This next mobilization is an interesting one. We're gonna be trying to take our heel bone, our calcaneus, and gain a little bit of mobility in it. It floats underneath the main ankle joint, and it has to be able to tilt side to side as part of our foot doing what's called pronation and supination, which happens in every step when we're running. Pronation is the position that lets us absorb force. Supination makes our foot rigid so we can push our whole body weight off of the leg. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna use something like an ab mat, just some firm padding. We're gonna lay the ankle on that so it gets a little bit of support and we don't push our bone into the ground. And we're going to use a lighter kettlebell. And we're going to take the kettlebell, we're going to place it on the heel. You'll sort of feel that point where the heel meets the rest of the ankle. There's a bit of a joint there. I want to go below that. And I'm going to let the weight of the kettlebell push that heel down towards the ground. I can add a little bit of pressure to it. And then we're going to start to twist and think about almost like we're trying to scrape our heel away from the rest of the ankle and foot. We're trying to spread that joint open. So the angle is sort of down towards the floor here and out at a 45-degree angle for my lower leg. So I get the kettlebell on there, slight pressure down, twisting, scraping that heel away from the rest of the foot. Okay, and then I can come back and we'll just do repetitions of that pressure. You should feel sort of a deep stretch in there as you do this. This is going to gain us a little bit of mobility so our foot moves better when it is impacting the ground or pushing it off the ground as we run. Right, now we're going to mobilize our plantar fascia, or the arch of our foot, with a lacrosse ball. So the lacrosse ball goes on the floor. We're going to put it right underneath the arch of the foot, and I'm going to put some weight into that leg. And I'm just going to be rolling up and down the length of the arch of the foot, from the ball of the foot to the front of the heel bone. I'm looking for tender spots. You might even feel it a little crunchy in there because there can be some adhesions or some restrictions in the tissue. We want to scrape through that and try to break it up a little bit. If I find a tender spot, I'm going to hang out on it for a little bit. I can do small little circles to get it to release some more. If I feel like that's too much pressure for me, I can grab something to sit on. And now I take some of the weight off the leg and I can do the same exact thing in sitting. This is one that I recommend that people do a few minutes per day on each foot. It's easy to do when you're at home or even sitting down, watching TV, reading, whatever you're doing. Really every day, this would be a great one to do, and you get some good effects up the chain into your calves, your hamstrings, and how your hips are moving just from keeping this loose. The next series of stretches we're going to do is going to target the calves and the arch of the foot. So we're going to use a wall here. We're going to do our basic runner's stretch. My hands are against the wall. The leg that I'm stretching is going to be the one behind me. And I keep that heel flat to the ground. My knee is straight. And my lead knee is going to push towards the wall until I feel a stretch in my upper calf. And we're going to do 30-second holds with this, a few repetitions. Then I want to target the lower part of the calf, which is a muscle called the soleus. And this typically doesn't get stretched as much. I'm going to get the same setup position, but now my rear leg is going to bend the knee. And I keep my heel flat and I sink my weight into it. And I should feel that stretch shift down towards the Achilles tendon. It's going to be a deeper and maybe a little less comfortable stretch. This muscle typically doesn't get stretched as much as the upper calf. Same thing, we're going to do 30-second holds, 3 to 5 repetitions. Then we're going to target that arch of the foot or the plantar fascia. So for the plantar fascia stretch, I'm going to put my foot against the wall at an angle, and I'm going to slide it down so that my toes get locked into extension there. Now I can start to shift a little weight into that foot and push my knee towards the wall and hold about 10 seconds and back off. And this one will do repetitions of about 10 seconds. You could do about 10 repetitions of this one. Hold and back off. This next exercise is going to work on ankle dorsiflexion, which is where our ankle is flexing in this pattern. It can really help you with squat depth, but it also helps with our running pattern. So what we're going to do is we're going to use another thick rubber band. This one's going to be thin enough to fit into the front of our ankle. So you'll see I can lay it right into that gap where my foot meets the ankle, and then I'm going to step forward and get a little bit of tension on it. From here, I'm going to work on just keeping my heel flat and driving my knee forward as far as I can while the strap is pulling back in that ankle joint. And then I can come back, and we're going to do repetitions here. About 20 repetitions per side. I can progress to putting my foot propped up on a plate or something a few inches high. And this is going to help to get a little bit more dorsiflexion range and challenge through that ankle. Hold and come back. Press that knee forward as far as you can. Hold and come back. Again, about 20 repetitions per side on this one. Next one is a mobilization for the hamstring, and it's using a thick elastic band here attached to something stable that's not going to move. We're going to step into it, get this pretty high up into the groin, step forward and get a little tension on the band. Okay, the leg with the band is going to be in front of the other leg, and then keeping my spine fairly straight, I'm going to bend forward, touch the floor, and from here I'm going to straighten my lead knee as much as I can, let it bend. Straighten and let it bend, and we're going to do repetitions. We're going to shoot for at least 20 per side with this. The band is going to be shifting the hip back in the socket a little bit so we get a joint mobilization. And then we're gliding the hamstring muscle, and we're also lengthening it with this. This next exercise is one that can be a little difficult to figure out. We're going to be focusing on the foot's movement on the ground, specifically pronation, which is when our arch flattens out, and supination, which is when our foot lifts that arch up to become more rigid. So we're going to stand on one foot. We can use something for balance here. And we're first going to try to go into pronation. So I'm going to let my arch flatten into the ground, and I let my toes spread. And you'll see my ankle kind of tilts inward, flattening the arch as much as I can, toes as spread as I can. Then I'm going to reverse that. I'm going to pull my arch up off the ground. My toes are grabbing at the ground, and my weight goes towards the outside of my foot. So this is supination. Then I'm going to go back into pronation, flattening the arch, letting my foot spread, and then pull myself up into supination, lifting that arch. Okay, try to keep the weight in this foot as much as you can. Don't push into the pull or whatever you're using for balance too much. And we're gonna go back and forth about 20 times per foot. Let's look at it from behind quickly. Here I'm gonna go into pronation, flattening the foot, spreading the toes, lift up, supination, toes grab at the ground, my arch comes off the ground. Flattening into pronation, lifting into supination. These are movements that are happening whenever we're running. As our foot hits the ground, we go into pronation to absorb the force, and then it shifts into supination, becomes rigid, and we're able to lift our body weight off of that foot when it's more rigid. The next exercise is going to be a strengthening exercise for our hips, and specifically it's going to be looking at the gluteus medius, which sits on the side of our hips, and it works alongside our gluteus maximus, which is in our butt. So what we're going to do for this is I use a 45-pound plate, something that elevates us a few inches. We're going to stand one foot right on the edge of it. From here, keeping my knee that I'm standing on fairly straight, I'm going to let my hips lower my foot to the ground, and then I'm going to hike back up as high as I can. My hips dip the foot to the ground and I hike back up. You can see my knee doesn't really bend to do this. I don't want to just squat down. Keep the knee locked in, tilt the hips, and lift back up. So this is using the muscle on the outside of my left hip to pull my weight back over that leg.